to the showcase session this morning, and I'm delighted to introduce our next speakers. Barbara Gamashi.
Very good.
So she's a senior film program officer at the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany. Previously, Barbara was the director of filmmaker services at Women Make Movies. And Abigail Prate. And she's a film program officer at Claims Conference. She's also an experienced film director and producer. And Rachel Ferrucci, and she's a program media officer at the Claims Conference. She develops procedures, policies, and contracts for all new media. So today they will be presenting Inside Kristallnacht. This project uses cutting-edge mixed reality to immerse viewers in Holocaust survivors' first-hand experience of the night of the broken glass. Developed by the Claims Conference with key partners, this project offers a powerful way to connect emotionally with the pivotal moments in history. So if you haven't experienced, I highly recommend you to try it just over there on the same floor. Okay, so now over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Barbara Gamashi, and I am the manager for film and new media at the Claims Conference. So the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany, otherwise known as the Claims Conference, is a nonprofit organization with offices in New York, Israel, and Germany, which secures material compensation for Holocaust survivors around the world. In 2024, the Claims Conference distributed approximately $535 million in direct compensation to over 115,000 survivors in 84 countries and territories, and allocated approximately $888 million in grants to over 300 social service agencies worldwide that provide pivotal services for Holocaust survivors, such as home care, food, and medicine. This work is the core of what the Claims Conference does. But the Claims Conference also supports Holocaust education with grants for projects such as exhibitions, teacher training, and archival work. Additionally, film and new media sit within Holocaust education. My colleague Rachel will discuss our new media funding, so I'm going to focus on film. As an intentional program, the Claims Conference began funding film about 15 years ago. Film and storytelling in general has the power to educate, create connections, and spark powerful discussions. Over the past 15 years, the Claims Conference has supported over 275 films, and you can see the reach of some of the films on the slide on the screen. The Claims Conference provides grant funding to filmmakers worldwide at any stage of development, production, and post-production. We fund fiction and nonfiction, short form and feature-length films. Some examples of recently completed films include Neshoma, which premiered at IDFA, Bedrock, which premiered at Berlin, and The Stamp Thief, which premiered at the Palm Springs Film Festival. And this is a good selection of films to highlight for a number of reasons. Neshoma is a film entirely composed of archival footage that, together with a fictional narrative based on primary sources, illuminates Jewish life in pre-war and occupied Amsterdam. Bedrock is an observational documentary about contemporary Poland and the lived realities of people whose homes are on Holocaust sites. And finally, The Stamp Thief is a documentary about a Hollywood filmmaker who sets out to find a treasure trove of priceless stamps stolen by a Nazi officer from concentration camp victims and buried in a house in Poland. As you can see, these are very different films, and that is intentional. When we're looking at film applications, we're asking a variety of questions. Is there a unique entry point? Is this an underexplored topic? Is it cinematic? Is there an audience for the film, and does the applicant know how to reach them? And to be clear, we don't mean that every film has to premiere at Berlin or Sundance. We fund films of every scope and budget level, but we want to know that the filmmaker knows where their film fits in the distribution landscape. Neshoma, Bedrock, and The Stamp Thief all answer these questions in the affirmative. Additionally, they highlight stories from different countries, which is also important to us when we're considering a project. And finally, we are actively looking to expand our reach into new regions. For example, a recently completed Claims Conference supported film called The Exile of the Musicians, about German Jewish musicians who were able to escape to Argentina during the war, is currently touring South America. In addition to our regular film grant, we also have an emerging filmmaker contest. We define emerging as a filmmaker who has not directed more than one feature-length film and who has had at least one work publicly screened. We award one winner $60,000 to make a short film, 20 minutes or less, fiction or nonfiction, about the Holocaust. This year, one of our contest winners, The Ice Cream Man, was shortlisted for an Academy Award. As you can see, the Claims Conference has a very robust film program that works to educate general audiences through varied and powerful storytelling. If you or someone you know has a project that you think might be a good fit for us, please get in touch. Even if you're not sure whether it's a fit for us, please get in touch. We're happy to have the conversation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel, who's going to talk about new media.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As Barbara said, I am Rachel Ferrucci. I'm the New Media Program Officer at the Claims Conference, and I have to say I'm very proud to be a part of this team. The Claims Conference is incredible. I've been there for 2 years, and within that 2 years, I've seen them grow towards new media. With the Claims Conference, I have the privilege of helping support and foster innovation through storytelling, memory preservation, and education, all in the service of Holocaust survivors. We learn lessons through their experiences, and it continues to teach us. Here at this expo, we have current and hopefully future partners. At the intersection of historical memory and innovation, we're building something profound, new media experiences that carry the weight of Holocaust history into the future. We're looking for visionary partners like you to help make that possible. My role at the Claims Conference focuses on expanding our reach through digital storytelling and emerging technologies. I come from a background of creative strategy and media development, and I'm passionate about applying those skills to one of the most urgent and meaningful missions, preserving and sharing Holocaust memory in a way that's powerful and truthful. We're not simply digitizing history. We're reimagining how it's lived, learned, and passed on. We fund and support a wide variety of new media projects that engage with Holocaust content in compelling, responsible, and often boundary-pushing ways. These include podcasts, social media campaigns, video games, VR, AR, XR, MR, anything with an R, AI, and mobile apps. Some of our grantees you might have seen, and if not, I encourage you to find them. We have 2 games, Normandy, Sam Butin. We also have the Light in the Darkness Director's Cut with Lexi Graves and Luke Bernard. We have, I don't want to forget anybody, If These Streets Could Talk, which is in AR, and actually he just did a talk, so, but you can find Barna. And who am I missing?
A Dangerous Journey.
Oh yes, oh my. Immersive media, A Dangerous Journey with Lucia and Andreas. So I do encourage you to find them and talk about their projects. All projects must align with our mission, and that's honoring survivors, preserving testimony, and educating future generations. But how we get there is open to innovation, and that's where you all come in. So we encourage you to find us. I'm not hard to find in this suit. We're actively seeking technology partners who want to power these kinds of experiences, from developers and designers to platform builders and AI experts. We're interested in how your tools and platforms can enhance truth-telling and historical fidelity. Our funding application opens in January and it closes in March to fund projects the following year. So with that said, I do encourage you all, if you have an idea, like Barbara said, please come speak to us, and let's see if we can make a change. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Abigail Prada. I'm the film program officer at the Claims Conference, and I've been with the Claims Conference for 5 years now. And I was part of the task force that worked on the project inside Kristallnacht. So I will share a teaser with you so that you can get a sense of it. And then for the rest of this presentation, we thought it might be interesting to get a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look into what goes on into making a project like this, because it was the very first time that we did such a thing. Of course, we've supported creators before, but this was the first time that we actually commissioned and produced emerging media. So with that, let's take a look at Inside Kristallnacht.
My name is Charlotte Knobloch. I was born in 1932 in Munich, Germany, where I lived with my father, Fritz Neuland. My mother was named Margrethe. She and my father divorced when I was 4. As a child, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents in Bayreuth, Germany. My blessed grandfather was a good businessman and had a very nice business there. My grandmother was a very respected lady who was involved in a lot of social issues. I can still see the huge grandfather clock. It was a very pleasant life.
Yeah, so this is a WebXR experience. So you can access it on a browser. It's accessible to anyone with an internet connection. But you can also access the experience through a headset. So you still would go to the browser, but then you click a button and then it will become available in the immersive space. So this project, as I mentioned before, was quite a change of pace for us. So we wanted to reproduce this experience, and we had different partners on board with that. So firstly, we worked with the USC Shoah Foundation and a French XR production company called Make Me Pulse. And then we also partnered with UNESCO and Meta to make the experience, to work together on this project. And even for the Claims Conference, it was a little bit tricky because we were working together with another department, which is called the Department of Emerging Initiatives. So it was a collaboration between the Research, Education, and Documentation Department and the Department of Emerging Initiatives. So you see there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen, which also made it an interesting project to work on. But we are so excited that we now have produced this project. So as you see, as you could see from the little teaser, central to this experience is Dr. Charlotte Knobloch, who's a German Holocaust survivor. So during Kristallnacht, she was 6 years old, and she and her father were roaming the streets like the entire night, trying to stay safe. But she also is a very renowned Jewish community leader. She was the vice president of the World Jewish Congress, and she's done many things, and she's now 92 years old. So central to this experience is Dr. Charlotte Knobloch. So I'll also give you a little bit of a background to the technical side, although I don't really know about it, but for those of you who are interested, I put it up here. So it's compatible with the Quest and the Quest 3. Also, you can access it through the desktop, and it is a web-based experience. So that means that it's not an app that you can access through the headset. It really goes via browser, and that has of course advantages, but also disadvantages, as we later found out. But the great thing about it is that it is accessible to anyone who has an internet connection. And then the framework and the stack, I put that up there if you want to know about it, but I don't know anything about it. So when we were coming up with the idea for Inside Kristallnacht, the way we went about it was for Charlotte to tell her story, and then the idea was that at several moments inside one chapter, there would be hotspots that you could click on to get further context. So using archival material, using other information, so that users who are engaged with the experience, they can click on a hotspot and read more information about this experience. So that's the way this experience has been set up, the framework for the experience. So as you can see in this slide, there's different elements that are different hotspots that you can engage with as a user. So I also wanted to share the initial concept for Inside Kristallnacht. As I mentioned before, we were working with a lot of different partners. And I feel like some of the partners were very firmly in the Holocaust education space, and then others were not so much because they're more from the creative side. And I think there's always a little bit of friction between the two. That's quite interesting, because even though we all might come to an experience like this with the best intentions, everyone is coming from it from their own point of view. So the initial concept for Inside Kristallnacht, which was proposed by the XR production company, was like very much using like the black and white kind of like the Nazi colors, which we did not like so much because we wanted to move away with that, but it was interesting also for us to see that. And then also, as you can see in this slide, like the initial concept also wanted to present the information more as like a folder of information, so you would get access through the hotspots would be proposed through like a folder, and you would get more information about that. But we also were like, we're not so sure about that, because the idea of like having a folder on someone is a little bit sinister. So we moved away from this idea. Then also another thing that was interesting is that in the initial design or the initial proposal, the company, the XR production company, very much wanted to use also the Fracture font, which we also did thought like, oh, we have to be careful about that. So when we, so here you see another slide that showcases that. But so we had a big conversation about this, and ultimately we decided to just move away from some of these things. So here you can see the 4 types of interactions for each hotspot. So it could be through radios or phones. You can see a map, then the archive files, which we changed, but I'll show you that later, and then archival footage. So then we decided to move more to away from the red, black, and white, and using the Nazi kind of aesthetics. Then we moved more to a yellow palette. We decided for the Fracture font because we found that problematic, but we did feel like we could use it if it was only concerning propaganda, or so that was the reasoning behind it. So if it's something like propaganda, then we could use it, but not in general for the rest of the experience. And then also for the folder, we moved away from that, and now it's Post-its. So you have controllers. You can use the controllers to click on hotspots, then you can access different footage or archival material, and you can slide that. And then also here you see that we updated it from the previous version. I'll show you now also what a hotspot looks like. So yeah, so in the experience you can access it, and then you can slide through it, and these are like earlier mock-ups, but there will be information about the material you're seeing, also where it's coming from. So it's all very robust in terms of showing where it's coming from. And then let me show you something else. Yeah, this is like another hotspot. Oh yeah, so the map we also thought was really important for students or whoever is accessing this experience to get further context. But an interesting thing about the map was that we wanted to give more context to this, because we thought maybe an American audience might not be so familiar where everything is situated within Europe. So our initial concept was just showing Germany, but we thought, no, it needs to be contextualized also geographically. Okay. And then for each of the hotspots, it was quite a lot of work, because each of the hotspots, of course, like the assets needed to be sourced, but then we also all had to agree on like the language and information that was included with the hotspots. So it was like a real back and forth process with us and USC Showa, and then also with the XR production company that then had to implement everything. So this is also an early version of what the experience looked like, or an early idea. And I thought it would be interesting to show kind of the initial concepts for this experience, because of course it's one thing to have an idea, but then to actually visualize the design and then to also implement that, you're also running into different ethical considerations, but also into practical considerations. So we were going for a more graphic novel style kind of aesthetic. One, because that's what we really liked, and we also thought it might be more engaging to younger audiences, but also because it would help us in terms of the design practically, because then we can play more with shadow and light and what you see and what you don't see, and that would also help budgetarily, but also just in terms of like running the experience on the headset. So I'm gonna move forward now. Another thing that I thought was very interesting from compared to our original idea and to what actually ended up happening. So our idea initially was that you would have Charlotte speak to you, and then you would be able to switch back and forth between Charlotte and the virtual space. So it would be something like this, where you would see her in the bottom corner, and then you would see the virtual space, and you could toggle between the two. And I think that would have been really great, because then Charlotte is always a presence in the experience. But unfortunately, when we were filming Charlotte, it turned out that just her advanced age and also speaking in English were a little bit more difficult and challenging for her, so we could no longer have that continuous presence of Charlotte. So we had to only start with her, and then you would see the virtual space, and then you would go. We couldn't have her in the experience at the same time as the virtual part. So I think we lost a little bit there, but it's also a practical issue that we had to deal with. And then here, so then for all the visuals of course in the experience, they all needed to be individually created. And then also we had to figure out a way to incorporate it had to be, of course, based on real primary sources. So the design company was really working on, together with USC Show, as sourcing like each individual item that they wanted to put in there, because that all had to be created. So I just thought it would be interesting to show you this as a behind the scenes look. And again here, we had to do storyboards. This is like chapter 2. And then, of course, it all had to be implemented for the desktop, but then also for mobile, because it's also accessible on mobile. And so I wanted to share something that we learned along the way. So initially, we also, and I think this came from a really good place of like wanting to prioritize listening to Charlotte and listening to her story. So we made the decision at the time that you cannot skip between chapters unless you finish the complete experience. But then, as we were working on it practically, and we made that choice, we found out that it's actually it can be quite a long experience if you are really committed to clicking on each and every hotspot. It can become quite a long experience. So we ultimately, I think now we would no longer do that. But I think the intention was really good, but it was good in a hypothetical way, not necessarily thinking about the practical side. So in order to access a next chapter, you have to finish a chapter. So you can't skip back and forth, which also makes it a little bit more complicated when you're working on this. I think the lessons that we learned from working on this experience, I mean, first of all, because this was the first time that we did such a thing, it was just first and foremost very exciting. But of course, we learned some lessons from working on this and things that we would maybe change now. we also have, just based on our work as supporting emerging media, but also research that we've supported, we've devised like guidelines for creators, but also funders and exhibitors and educators for when you're working on a VR experience. So it could be practically, but also educationally. And we're gonna publish that on our website pretty soon. But also, if you reached out to us, we can share it with you. So that was one thing that came out of this. Then another thing I think that we learned is that I think an experience, like, and I think it's always a little bit the gap between the two worlds, like the educational side and the creative side. But I think like an experience can be very educational and provide a lot of context. But I think also it can also become a little bit too dense. So I think finding that balance is really important. And then I think another thing that we learned is like when you're showcasing a project like this, having not only the web version, but also like a separate version that is not reliant on internet would also be very useful. But yeah, and then I think I will hand it back to everyone here. We'll open it up for questions. But you can, oh yeah, no, sorry, I forgot one thing. So what we've done with this experience so far, so it launched on Kristallnacht last year in 2024. Since then, we've brought the experience to different schools in New York, but we also work together with the New Jersey Commission for Holocaust Education, and it has been distributed to over 2,000 schools. But we are also looking for other opportunities, showcasing this experience at different festivals or other educational conferences. We also have a curriculum available, so you can just download it on the internet. And with that, I will give our contact information. And there's the film website, there's the new media website, but of course you can always reach out to us for any questions. And that's it.
Okay, before I open the question to the audience, I have two questions for you guys. The first one, because I experienced that 2 days ago, I think it's quite extraordinary. Not only because you provide a lot of information, knowledge, history, but also there's a compelling storyline. So I'm just curious about how did you develop the storyline? So did you ask the production company to come up with the storyline, or you work together? So what's the method you work together?
Yeah, so I think we always knew that we wanted to work with Dr. Charlotte Knobloch because we've worked with her many times before, and we knew her story was very, very extraordinary. And so when we came up with the idea to produce this experience, I think there was no doubt that we would work with Dr. Charlotte Knobloch, but the process in which they worked together was the USC Shoah Foundation did a very long interview with her. Also, I didn't mention there's a very exciting part to the experience where we're using USC Shoah's Dimensions and Testimonies technology, and you can ask Charlotte questions. So they did a preliminary long interview with her just so that we would have her story, but then also at some point after that, they asked her all the questions that anyone could possibly ask for the DIT experience.
So it's interactive, right?
Yes.
So it's not like a one-way.
Yeah.
Okay, the second question probably for Barbara and also Rachel. So talking about the commission process, what's the criteria for you to pick up the emerging or talented filmmakers? Because I think I'm also a documentary filmmaker. I teach my story at different places. I think it's quite important to learn carefully about the selection criteria. For example, is the creative quality or the artistic expression or the history accuracy? So what is...
Sure.
Yeah,
sure. So as Rachel said, we have one open call per year. That application will open in January. It will close in March. We have a very, very long timeline. It closes in March. You do not find out whether you've received funding until December, and then your grant period begins the following January. So for that 2026 open call, the funding would begin in January 2027. The good thing about that long timeline is that program officers work really closely with applicants to get their applications in the best shape possible and to really work with them to put their best foot forward. So the application, and I'll speak about film and then Rachel can speak about new media. In terms of the film application, you'll see a lot of sort of the basic things you would see in any application. A log line, a synopsis, your budget, your schedule, your fundraising plan, your distribution plan. But then we will also ask questions that are specific to us. So what is the relationship of the project to the Holocaust? Is there something new we're learning? Is this an underexplored topic? Are you working with historical consultants? And I would say the answer should be yes. You should be working with historical consultants. So those are some of the questions that we'll ask. For film, we fund by phase. So we fund development, production, and post-production. For development, we fund up to $25,000. For production and post-production, we fund up to $100,000. We are a matching grant on a reimbursement basis. So what that means is, whatever you are awarded, there is a match. And in the case of film, it is a 40% match. You have to spend that money in order to get it back from us. I think that's
it.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. For new media, it's ditto what Barbara said, except there's different questions depending on which new media you're filling out for. So there are some different questions for a social media campaign versus a VR. We fund the entire project. We let you ask for up to 70%. However, I will say, we don't usually fund at 70%. This year, we have become very competitive. The word has gotten out that we are funding new media, and we are getting amazing projects. I'm so excited because we have many, many coming out. One of the good things I will say about the long process is because we're working with you to make sure your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted, by the time you're done with the application with us, you don't have any questions. You're ready to start your project. So I think that's actually a benefit of the long process. I don't think I missed anything.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions?
Sorry, I'm just a bit confused about the word match funding. So, am I right in saying so that you give a percentage and the
Right, so if
applicant has to match find the rest of the funding?
If the project is $100,000 and we're funding you at 50%, you have to match that other 50%. So you would have to come up with 50,000, and we would fund you at 50,000. Now you can also go to other funders. We don't say, well, we're giving you, you're only taking our money. You can get funding for the entire project. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think generally we would like to see other partnerships that you have in place, so that I don't think we would like to be the sole funder of a project, and that's really why that match is in place, because that also will benefit your projects when you have those partnerships and connections in place.
And we're also a reimbursement program. So you submit the receipts and the invoices, and then we reimburse you.
Please.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm excited to get in the headset and experience this for myself. Also related to funding as in the United States specifically, where the National Endowment for the Humanities digital projects for the public and other new media lines are for now absolutely non-available. For the multiple funder scenario that is typically part of these projects, is corporations that are eager to move their technology into serious topics, spaces, serious games like yours. If the remainder of the funding is from a corporate grant, is that appropriate? Is that, given how our federal granting system has collapsed in the US?
Yeah, so we don't have any particular issues with any kind of funding, as long as it, doesn't, it's not misaligned with our mission, right? Yeah. I mean, but it can be investments, it can be donations, it can be your own funding, it can be individual funding, it can be any kind of match.
Except German funding.
Right, so thank you, Rachel, that is a great point. So we are funded by the German government, and that is public funding. So what that means is if a project receives other public funding in Germany, it is not eligible for our funding. So that is something to bear in mind.
However,
Yeah. Yeah.
there might be a way to work with this if you have a partner that's outside of Germany.
Right.
So in any case, you should talk to us,
Yes.
and we'll
Yes.
start the conversation.
Yes.
We'll figure it out for you.
And all the funds is open to the international.
Yes.
Oh,
it's
worldwide.
Worldwide.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any differences between, for example, artists, filmmakers receive money from the US or from other countries? The same procedure?
It's in 6 different currencies. So it's in euros and pounds. What else?
Canadian dollars.
Yeah, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, and shekels.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's not about funding at all. I was just really interested in those behind the scenes discussions really around the aesthetics, the font being used, the color being used.
Yeah.
I just wondered what kind of conversations happen. I've loved being in the different arcades and seeing all the different experiences, but they are incredibly beautiful. And where is that line between creating a beautiful environment and telling stories that obviously honor the richness of the lives of the people whose stories you're telling, compared to very harsh realities of where they're facing it? It's clear so much thought goes into just color, just font. Where does that fit into it?
Yeah, I think that's just a very interesting conversation in general that we encounter in new media, but also in film, in terms of where you find that balance, and also how much do you show and how much what do you not show? Because of course the history is a horrific history, and ultimately, but then also you also need to think who's your audience and what is suitable for that audience. So an interesting thing is we're working now on a second chapter of Inside Kristallnacht, focusing on Austria, and we're having the same discussions again, and I think it's really important that the conversations, or whatever decision you make, it always needs to be intentional. But so, for example, like with the Fracture font, sometimes we might want to use it, but then only limiting it for propaganda. But for this new version, we're also having this conversation where some people feel like maybe you need to show some things more explicitly to showcase the horrors that happened. Whereas we're also wondering, can we show this in a different creative way? Like one of the films that we supported is Son of Saul, which of course shows this history in a very, very creative way, but also it doesn't diminish the impact of what is being shown. So.
Yeah, I would just add to that, I think your word intentional is really important, because I'm not sure that we've come up with the hard and fast rules yet, and maybe we shouldn't. But what's really important is to continue to ask the questions, think about what we're doing, why we're doing it, who we're doing it for, and just keep that sort of rigorous conversation going every single step of the way.
Just a very quick sort of self-seeking question. My work's looking at refugees that arrived in Britain as a result of the arrests of German Jewish men following Kristallnacht, specifically the Kitchener camp, which is 4,000 German Jewish men who've been in the concentration camps in November 38, coming to a refugee camp in Britain. Is that kind of move to Britain into refugees too far away from your kind of remit to be potentially of interest, or is that still within your scope?
Well, I'm going to go to your talk later because I'm very interested. But so in some cases we might need to know a little bit more about the project before we can answer that. But so as for film and new media, we always say it doesn't necessarily need to be set in the past. Like we've supported projects about intergenerational trauma, about restitution, so where it's really also about the legacy of the Holocaust, the impact of the Holocaust, and like we supported one project that took place in the contemporary times, which was not solely focused on the Holocaust. So the Holocaust was one part of the story. So we were able to come on board for that. But we usually wanted to have a conversation with you to see where we find that balance.
Hi, my name is Alison Dewey. I just wanted to say, first of all, a fantastic presentation, and I was really excited to hear specifically that you're planning on expanding it to classrooms. So I'm originally from the US, so I was kind of wondering, given the amount of kind of Holocaust-related material that's being banned in classrooms, you see like diary and Frank being banned in primary schools and secondary schools, same with Mouse by Spiegelman. Do you anticipate there being any kind of pushback to you implementing this in the classroom? And if so, how you plan on countering that? And if you do have any plans on expanding it further than just like New Jersey and New York area? So again, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Like, I think we will try to keep bringing this experience to different states. Of course, the Claims Conference has done many surveys now about also Holocaust education in the U.S. So we're always interested in reaching those bottom 10 states. But we're also bringing Inside Kristallnacht to schools in Germany. We've done some already, but a German curriculum will also become available. So we are interested in Germany and Austria, and hopefully we can translate it into other languages as well. But yeah, the political landscape is difficult right now.
So if first of all, thank you, of course. And if I understand correctly, it has been deployed for a bit over a year now?
For like 6-7 months, yeah.
Okay, so regarding impact, are there any studies done, are they being done on what level this project is impactful to students? Or is it more the emotional level? Does it spark further curiosity? All these kinds of, because I mean, it's an impressive experience, but I think it's very important to consider, like, what's the effect beyond that?
Yeah, and we're interested. Well, we've supported research into that, but we're interested in also elaborating expanding on this further for other research as well, and for the projects that we're supporting.
Yeah, evaluation is very, very important to us. Rachel mentioned that we fund a percentage of new media projects, and I think when we go to those higher percentages, it's because there's a very robust evaluation component. Impact is something we discuss a lot, and I think that term can be very slippery. What's impactful in the moment may not continue to be impactful 6 months later. You know, I personally like the word outcomes. I think maybe that's a little bit more concrete, but even that, you know, you don't know how much that's going to continue into the future. So this is an ongoing conversation and something that is very important to us. And we are open to ideas about sort of unique ways to evaluate this kind of technology.
Yeah, and also when we support something like to the extent that we have with the higher levels, then it's also something that benefits us in terms of knowledge, but also for the field in general, because it should be that we're all working in the same field, so we can share knowledge, you know.
Sorry to have so many questions, but I'm really excited that the topic of assessment and evaluation was raised, and that you're very interested and supportive of that. When we talk about evaluation plans, and specifically with our newer media like VR, where there are things in addition to the learning outcomes that we need to evaluate, particularly with topics that are traumatic and differently traumatic for who is in the headset, right? Am I a descendant? Am I just unfamiliar with this history and it's embodied? Are you interested in evaluation that is formative, particularly with these critical stakeholder groups like our descendants, as well as summative in terms of what are the outcomes? So just curious if formative as well as summative is of interest to you, and
It could be
how do you like?
Yeah,
It could be very
I
interesting.
think we're interested in all evaluations. And, you know, going back to the individual project, what is that goal? Who's their target audience? And then we could figure out what do we want to know from that particular audience, and that's how we create that evaluation.
Yeah, because I don't think we've seen something like that yet. So that could be actually interesting for you to explore if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah.
There's a good one.
Yeah.
And I'll give a couple quick tips on the applications. We found many people giving us every statistic out there. We're very familiar with the statistics. We want the meat of the project. We want to know what your goals are. We want to talk about your particular project. For a lack of better words, we don't need fluff. We also understand that we all want to end anti-Semitism, but your project, sorry to say, it's not going to end it, but it can help. So we want to be realistic about what we're doing.
And I think a good word to keep in mind is measurable. We want whatever you're doing to be measurable in some way. Whether that is, if it's a social media campaign, how many people are you reaching? It could be how many schools have you gotten your experience into, but there has to be a measurable outcome.
Yeah, and I think also, as Rachel was saying, being mindful of what language you use, so like not like this is the only project, this is the first, and using like superlative language like that. I think we're very mindful of that, and then also things being measurable and specific to you, because I think we see a lot of applications that might give like general statistics about podcasts are very popular nowadays and reaches so many people, but then we always want to know, but how are you going to reach your audience, and in what way will you do that?
Yeah.
I think there's a question for that.
I would just actually have a last really critical comment. Why are you still using the term new media? Sorry,
It's up to here.
So, let's,
What would you like us to use?
Yeah, digital media, whatever, but it's not new anymore. It's been out there for 35, 40 years.
No, you're correct. It is new to the Claims Conference. So, we're growing, and it's not happening overnight, and there's a lot. If you're in digital media, you know it's overwhelming. So for people who have never used, created, or funded this type of media, every project that comes in, it really wows them. In 2 years that we've been doing this, we went from 4 projects to 28, or 4 applications to 28 applications. So be patient, give us time, we'll get there.
But wait, is the objection to new media just VR? Or just
No,
the
the
new
term.
It's
Term.
digital
digital
media.
Yeah. Instead of new. Well, we're a bureaucratic organization. Like,
Yeah.
So even the idea that we are supporting video games, AR, VR, podcasts is we're happy that we're able to do
You
that.
don't have to convince me. I'm just saying
Yeah.
maybe you should change.
Yeah.
her.
Okay.
Well, we'll take that feedback.
Yes.
Note taken.
We will take it back with us.
Okay, anyone final comments?
Yeah, maybe just a bit of a side one, but as regards to the discussion of assets, on one of the presentation slides before, you showed these propaganda mock-ups, right? And I think I might be wrong, but they had some telltale signs of being AI generated. And I was wondering, and that's a fact, we're using AI generated assets in development. Is this something to discussing the ethics of that with developers? Because, I mean, they're useful, but they're also feeding from data that might be based on stuff that we want to work against. So
Yeah. So I think that's really important information to take back also, because we're working together in a very large team, and the XR company is implementing everything. So I think that's for subtitles and stuff they have used it, but I think it's also good to know for us to take that into the new iteration of Inside Kristallnacht, because those are definitely things that we want to be mindful of. Yeah.
And really, with any AI program project, you're checking and double checking to make sure that it's accurate.
Okay.
Just a thought related to this, and because it was part of the discussion yesterday, and I think in almost every talk, did you start this project with ethical guidelines or something, referring to the design or even the content wording, whatever? Did you come from this perspective and have something, I don't know, position sheet or whatever?
Yes. So we are very mindful of that, and we also, as I mentioned before, we're going to publish our guidelines just on our website for creators, funders, exhibitors on our website. Yeah.
Could you just, I don't know if we have time, could you elaborate a bit? I would be very interested in what were your fundamental pillars, I don't know, red lines, whatever.
Yeah, so actually maybe this is a larger conversation, but if you want to connect to us, then we can send you this and we can have a larger conversation, because we can share it with you maybe in advance. Because of course with the onboarding, the offboarding, also what you show, but also it's maybe too
perspective.
Yeah, I think it might be too big of a conversation for now, but we would be delighted to share anything if you're interested.
Thank you so much. I think it's almost 12. Thank you very much for this brilliant team. And again, I highly recommend you, encourage you to experience that if you haven't.